Hey everybody, today's words to live by are very simple. How may I serve? So, what if the most powerful question you could ask yourself each day isn't, what do I want, but how may I serve? So, I was reminded of that question this morning at the place where I worship, and the pastor spoke kind of about this question or around this question. He asked questions like, how may I be an instrument for God's love? How may I prioritize others and bring a certain spirit or my best efforts towards what I think God's spirit is to other people? And so it's interesting. It got me thinking about how that question evolves over time, right? Like as a kid, I grew up in a family that went to church most Sundays. And then I went to a high school and a university that were affiliated religiously. And so there was always this sort of top of mind question of service. And in fact, even in high school, we had a mandatory service project that was weekly. And I did that for 4 years. And so, I entered sort of the adult life with, this question, how may I serve, as something that wasn't really foreign. But then as you get sort of into young adulthood and into your, in my case at least, into your 20s, you start to get these material and earthly desires, right? Like, what kind of house do I want to live in? What car do I want to drive? How much money do I want to make? Where do I want to live? How much do I want to travel? And so pretty soon, for a period of time, you start to get into me, and gimme, and what's in it for me, and what do I get out of it? And if that all sounds like pretty transactional in terms of a way to go through life, it's because it is. It's a very transactional and very ego driven way to approach daily life. And some of it feels necessary because you start to build a life where you feel like I need resources in order to maintain what my life is and what my lifestyle is, or to support my family. And there might very well be really good reasons, right? But the point is that this way of approaching it is very high on the ego scale and it's very low on the human consciousness scale. And so when you start to get into this, like, what about me and what's in it for me, and these sort of like individual individual ways and trains of thought, it starts to engender things like jealousy and anger and shame and envy and all these things that are very low on a human consciousness level, and sort of the opposite of unconditional love and courage and things that I think a lot of us think are virtuous, right? And so it's something that at some point in time people shift back into this how may I serve mentality, because after you've run its course with like achieving what you wanted to achieve and accomplishing and getting the stuff and what have you, you start to sort of say, well, now what? And it hits you, and you shift back into this mentality of, my purpose is actually in service, and it's always been that. It just hasn't been top of mind. And I think that comes to people at different times. I don't think there's an age on it, or I don't think you can say it's a midlife thing, because I think students that enter, let's say, seminary when they're in their early 20s, they have come to that question. They've arrived at that question earlier than most, and that's great. And I think there are some people who very, very late in life, perhaps well after retirement, maybe after a successful career in business, that they sit back and say, okay, well, how may I serve? Like I've got everything that I could possibly want from an earthly possession standpoint, right? And so they get to that question eventually. And I think myself and a group of friends that I talk to quite frequently, we've gotten to that point perhaps a little bit earlier than some people, where we understand that the answer always comes back to how may I serve. No longer are we even asking like, what do I want? What things can I buy? It just becomes irrelevant. It's not to sort of throw shade at people that still want the things at all, because we all wanted the things at some point. But I think it's just like, how do we want to live the rest of our days, however long we have, and in what way? And I don't think a lot of people want to live it in a transactional way where it's just you're always keeping a general ledger on like what's coming in versus what's going out. The focus is on giving, and there comes a point in time when you understand that if you have faith when you give, you know the goodness is going to come back around in some way, shape, or form. So I think if you're questioning what your purpose is at this point and sort of hesitant to sort of let go of some of the ego driven pursuits, I think it's good to look at the tools that you've been given and the qualities you possess and ask, how may I serve? So I hope you enjoyed this, and I think the rest of these videos will be much shorter, and not all of them will have a religious bent to them, but I think you'll see some of the spirituality sort of undertones coming through in most of the videos that I do, and it aligns with what I believe my purpose is now in terms of sharing what I know about life experiences with people and how they can live a better life and be happier as well. So if you enjoyed this, please like and or subscribe, and I will be back and see you all again very soon.